me repeat that. This is not about vanity. Vanity is insecurity wearing expensive shoes. What we're talking about is something far colder, far more deliberate. We are talking about the weaponization of your physical presence. History's most dangerous men, Caesar, Bismarck, Napoleon, Rockefeller, they all understood something that your Instagram feed and your self-help books will never teach you. How you look is how the world decides to treat you. Before you speak a single word, there's a name for it in psychology. Several, actually. But throughout this video, we're going to move through 6 dark reversals. 6 truths they kept from you that will make you never look in the mirror the same way again. And by the end of this, you might realize just how long you've been losing the game. Let's begin. Reversal 1. The halo is a weapon. In 1972, a psychologist named Richard Nisbett ran a study. Students watched recordings of the same instructor, same man, same voice. In one version, he was warm and friendly. In the other, cold and distant. Then the students were asked to rate his appearance, his mannerisms, even his accent. The warm version, more attractive, more well-spoken, more physically appealing. The cold version, irritating, unattractive. Even his accent was rated as bothersome. Same man, same face, same voice. This is called the halo effect. And it doesn't just work emotionally. It works physically. When you look good, when you are groomed, well-dressed, postured, composed, people assign you qualities you may not even have. Intelligence, competence, integrity, trustworthiness. This isn't a glitch in human cognition. It is a feature. We evolved to make rapid assessments. Thousands of years ago, you didn't have time for a resume. You looked, you assessed, you decided, safe or dangerous, leader or follower, ally or threat. That wiring hasn't changed. Now here is where it gets dark. Because the halo effect doesn't just make people like you more, it makes people forgive you more. Studies show that attractive people receive lighter sentences in court. They get hired at higher rates for the same qualifications. They're interrupted less in conversation. Trusted faster. Promoted sooner. The legal system. The job market. Your social life. All quietly tilted by something as brutally simple as how you present yourself. Machiavelli said it plainly in The Prince. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. He wrote that in 1513. 500 years later, neuroscience confirms it. The halo is not a metaphor. It is a mechanism, and you can either wear it or be worn down by someone else who does. Reversal 1. Your appearance is not decoration. It is a preemptive argument, and you make it whether you intend to or not. Reversal 2. The mirror doesn't lie, but you do. Here is a question I want you to sit with. When did you last truly look at yourself? Not a glance in the bathroom mirror at 7 a.m. Not a quick front camera check before a photo. I mean a full, cold, honest audit. Most people can't do it. And I don't mean this as an insult. I mean it as a clinical observation. The human brain has a documented bias called self-serving attribution. We tend to remember ourselves as slightly taller, slightly more attractive, slightly more capable than we actually were in any given moment. We also have something called the spotlight effect. The belief that people notice our flaws far more than they actually do, which seems reassuring until you realize what it actually produces. Complacency. You tell yourself, nobody noticed that you've gained weight. Nobody noticed the wrinkled shirt. Nobody noticed you slumping in your chair like the posture of a man who's given up on himself. They noticed. They just didn't say anything. There is a concept in behavioral economics called the cost of invisibility. It describes what happens to your opportunities, your relationships, your income when you simply fail to be seen as someone worth paying attention to. You don't get rejected. You get something worse. You get overlooked. And the tragedy is this. The people most likely to be overlooked are the ones who have convinced themselves that appearance is shallow, when in reality, they've just found a philosophy that excuses their avoidance. Because looking good requires discipline. It requires confronting the mirror. Honestly, it requires doing the work, the physical work, the grooming work, the stylistic work, every single day, even when no one is watching. Otto von Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor, the man who unified Germany through sheer political will, dressed immaculately. Always, even during military campaigns, even at 4 a.m., even when no one of consequence was present. When asked why, he reportedly said something to this effect. I dress for myself so that I never forget who I am. That is the key. This is not about performing for others. It is about sending a constant signal to your own nervous system, about refusing to let your outer world slide into entropy while you tell yourself you're focused on what matters. Because how you treat your appearance is how you treat yourself. And the world simply mirrors it back. Reversal 2. You aren't too evolved to care about how you look. You're too afraid of what honest reflection would demand from you. Reversal 3. The Roman secret. In ancient Rome, the word dignitas did not simply mean dignity as we understand it today. It meant a quality of visible authority. The aura a man projected. The weight his presence carried in a room. It was earned through achievement. Yes, but it was communicated through appearance. Roman senators dressed in white togas bordered with purple. Not because they liked the color, but because the visual immediately signaled power to anyone who saw them. The hierarchy was worn. Julius Caesar was famously obsessive about his appearance. He used to comb his thinning hair forward. Historians mocked this, but Caesar understood something his mockers did not. Image management is power management. He controlled how he was perceived. That control was not separate from his political genius. It was a part of it. Now look at his heir, Octavian, the man who would become Caesar Augustus, Rome's first emperor. He was, by ancient accounts, physically unimpressive. Short, often ill, not physically intimidating. And yet he became the most powerful man in the Western world. How? He manufactured his image with the precision of a modern brand strategist. He commissioned statues, hundreds of them, portraying him in idealized form. He wore modest clothing that projected virtue over opulence. He controlled his portraiture so that even decades into his reign, official images showed him as young, composed, eternal. He understood that people do not follow the man they see. They follow the man they imagine, and appearance is how you guide that imagination. Now bring this forward. Psychology professor Albert Mehrabian's work, though often misquoted, points towards something real. A staggering portion of our first impressions come from nonverbal signals. Posture, grooming, clothing, eye contact. The way you occupy space. Before your first word, the jury has already begun deliberating. What are you presenting to that jury? Are you presenting the man who has given up on himself? The man in the shapeless clothes and the tired eyes and the slumped shoulders that broadcast, "I've stopped trying"? Or are you presenting the man who has decided, coldly, deliberately, every morning, that his appearance is a weapon he will keep sharpened? Reversal 3. In every room you enter, you are both the candidate and the campaign. Your appearance is your advertising. And right now, what is it selling? Reversal 4. The discipline loop. Here is what nobody tells you about working on your appearance. It isn't just about looking good. That's the surface result. The actual mechanism, the one that changes your life, is what psychologists call the behavioral cascade. When you make one disciplined decision about your body, your mind follows. When you start training, really training, consistently, something happens that goes far beyond muscle or fat loss. Your relationship with discomfort changes. Your tolerance for delayed gratification changes. Your self-concept changes. You start to see yourself as someone who does hard things, and that identity bleeds into everything else. William James, Harvard's first psychology professor, wrote in the 1890s that the fastest way to feel confident is to act confidently, not to wait for the feeling, to perform the behavior and let the emotion follow. This is not motivational fluff. This is a neurological fact. When you stand tall, when you pull your shoulders back, lift your chin, take up space, your cortisol levels measurably decrease, and your testosterone levels measurably increase. This was demonstrated in Amy Cuddy's research at Harvard Business School. However, its later replications were. The underlying mechanism remains. Embodied cognition is real. Your body sends messages to your brain, not just the other way around. When you dress well, you think differently. This is called enclothed cognition, a term coined by Hajo Adam and Adam Galinsky in a 2012 study. Participants who wore lab coats made significantly fewer errors on attention tasks. Not because the coat made them smarter, because the coat activated an identity, and that identity changed their behavior. Now imagine applying this to every layer of your appearance. The fitness, the grooming, the clothing, the posture, intentionality, Each one is a signal, not just to others, to yourself. And here is where the addiction begins. Because once you experience the compounding effect, once you feel the way a room responds to a man who has clearly decided to become someone, you cannot go back. The old slovenliness becomes intolerable, not because of vanity, because you've experienced what's possible. Benjamin Franklin, who was relentlessly strategic about his own public image, wrote, "It takes many good deeds to build a good reputation, and only one bad one to lose it." He was talking about character, but the principle extends. Your appearance is a reputation you build every single day. One neglected week can undo months of careful construction in the eyes of people who are judging you, and they are always judging you. Reversal 4. The addiction to your appearance is not shallow. It is a gateway drug to discipline itself. Every mirror is a contract you either honor or break. Reversal 5. The art of becoming unmistakable. Let us talk about what separates a well-dressed man from a memorable one. Because most men, when they finally start taking their appearance seriously, make the same mistake. They optimize for approval. They dress to avoid criticism. They groom to not stand out. They go to the gym to look acceptable. And what they produce is a kind of high-functioning invisibility. A person who looks fine is noticed briefly and then forgotten. This is not the goal. The goal is distinctiveness, the cultivation of a signature, a look that is immediately, unmistakably you. Study the great power players of history, and you see this pattern everywhere. Napoleon had a specific stance, hand tucked in the waistcoat, compact authority radiating from his posture. Even in portraits, you know it's him instantly. That was deliberate. Steve Jobs wore the same black turtleneck and jeans every day. This was not laziness. He said it explicitly. It eliminated decision fatigue and became his uniform, his visual identity. When you saw that silhouette on stage, you knew exactly what was coming. That certainty was power. Coco Chanel built an empire not just on clothes, but on a philosophy of appearance. She said, "Fashion fades. Style is eternal." The difference between fashion and style is the difference between chasing approval and projecting identity. Fashion asks, "What are they wearing?" Style asks, "Who am I?" Now, what is your answer? Because here is the dark truth. Most men have no answer. They wear what's comfortable. What was on sale? What they wore last year. They exist in a kind of aesthetic limbo. Not offensive, not memorable. And in a world where attention is the scarcest resource, the unmemorable are the invisible, and the invisible are the powerless. The man who has cultivated a signature, who moves through the world with consistent, intentional, personalized style, broadcasts something that cannot be faked. He broadcasts self-knowledge. And self-knowledge, as every student of power understands, is the foundation of every other form of dominance. Reversal 5. Don't dress to be accepted. Dress to be recognized. The goal is not approval. The goal is to be unmistakable, to burn into memory before you've said a word. Reversal 6. The long game is played in the mirror. There is a man in history I want to leave you with. His name was Talleyrand, Charles Maurice de Talleyrand-Périgord. He served under the French monarchy, the Revolution, Napoleon, and 3 subsequent regimes. He survived them all. He outlasted kings, emperors, ideologies, and revolutions. And throughout it all, through every political earthquake that destroyed every other man around him, he was impeccably dressed, perfectly groomed, composed, elegant, controlled in appearance at all times. Was this superficial? His enemies certainly said so. But consider, his appearance was part of his armor. It communicated in every room, at every negotiating table, at every moment of crisis, that he was a man who could not be rattled, who was never desperate, who always had options. That is the final truth. The man who has mastered his appearance has mastered something deeper, the daily practice of becoming who he intends to be. It is not about looking good for tonight. It is not about impressing one person or winning one job. It is about the compounding interest of self-respect. Every morning that you stand before the mirror with intention, that you train when you don't feel like training, groom when no one will see it, dress as though every day is a performance because it is. You are making a deposit, and those deposits accrue into posture, into presence, into the slow, quiet authority of a man who clearly, undeniably, takes himself seriously. And here is the final question I want to leave burning in your mind. The world will take you exactly as seriously as you take yourself. Look at how you walked into your last important meeting. Look at the last photo someone took of you without warning. Look at yourself right now, wherever you're sitting, whatever you're wearing. Is that man someone you would follow? Is that the version of you that your ambitions deserve? Or have you been playing the game? The most visible, most immediately correctable game there is, on easy mode? Reversal 6. The long game is won in private, in the decisions you make when no one is watching, in the mirror at 6 a.m., in the discipline of becoming, relentlessly, the man that your best opportunities will require. 6 reversals, all pointing to the same cold truth. Your appearance is not vanity. It is a strategy. It is the first chapter of your story, written on your body, broadcast with every entrance, read by every room. Before you utter a single syllable, most people will watch this and feel a brief flicker of recognition, a nod, a sense that, yes, they already knew this somewhere. And then they will go back to exactly what they were doing. Because change is uncomfortable. Because discipline is hard. Because it's easier to tell yourself that it's what's on the inside that counts. But you are not most people. If you've stayed with me this long, through 6 reversals, through Caesar and Bismarck and Talleyrand, some part of you already knows what you need to do. The question is whether you'll do it. Tomorrow morning, before anything else, before the phone, before the email, before the excuses, stand in front of the mirror. Look at yourself honestly and decide, coldly, deliberately, Finally, that the man looking back at you is going to be someone worth looking at. That decision, made daily, is the beginning of everything. Pause. If you found something in this video that disturbed you a little, good! That's the feeling of a truth you've been avoiding. Subscribe, because we go deeper every time. And the next video might be the one you were never supposed to see.